It is Friday, it is that time of the week where we look at the meta. Tanks and healers, for the first time ever, we will combine the two and check out how they perform in Mythic Plus because it kind of makes sense. Tank and healers go hand in hand. You have one tank and one healer per party with all the class buffs and nerfs that have come around, which will probably change because even as we do this, there aren't enough keys being done. So we'll be interested to see how this turns up in a month's time. But until that month completes, we're gonna look at Blood Death Knight first, and many people view this in high regard, mostly because they like Blood Death Knight, and who doesn't, let's be honest. Blood Death Knight is pretty awesome, but it's not a meta tank, although it is going to be in the A tier. And to be fair, I will talk about today how the balance is not that bad between tanks and healers, period, over the course of this Mythic Plus season. Of course, it could be better, but with Blood Death Knight, it's kind of A tier. And spoiler alert, this is going to be a little bit of a middle of the pack type tier. And when you tank or heal even, you have to be able to do it with no lag, so your party doesn't wipe. And here is where today's sponsor comes in. Exit Lag is an app that optimizes your gaming as the ultimate solution to smooth and lag-free gameplay. We all played that one dungeon when we were casting our heal a second too late because the servers lagged, or, you know, simply died and wiped the group to a bad connection, not to mention disconnects and FPS drops. Exit Lag comes in to help with all of that, and honestly, the options look really cool and I barely had to do anything to get it going. The routing is done purely through AI optimization, and with a dynamic stabilizer and a diagnostic sensor, it detects your most ideal server connection for your game based on where you are and what internet connection you have. It works with thousands of games, and you can create a connection with your game by searching it in this list. See how I already have it set up for WoW, and through its automatic process, it just does everything on its own. You can have it start when you boot up the PC, or if you want to be more comfortable, you just have it activate your connection when you launch the app. Just make sure you do it before you enter the game, since, you know, it has to establish a connection to the server prior to you loading in. The difference on my end is noticeable as well, and it shaved off about 6 ms, which, considering Romania has one of the best internet connections in the world, this is pretty cool already. In its new version, it even has an FPS boost where I really saw a big difference, since this is where my PC struggles the most. After I turned on all of the FPS features, I gained about 40 extra FPS in Undermine, where it's rough out there for our PCs, let's just say that. I am so bad at understanding networking of any kind that it's a big relief I can just use one app to fix all of that for me with just a press of a button. You'll need an account on their website, which is fairly simple to set up, after which you can just download and install Exit Lag from the big red button on top right there. You can trial it for about 72 hours if you still wish, and when you are ready, Exit Lag is actually celebrating its birthday with a B-Day promo where your annual subscription is half the price. Essentially, you buy 6 months and get 6 more months free. Not to mention that by using our promo code Marcelian, clicking the link in the description, or scanning the QR code on your screen, you will be supporting us and the content that we make. Thanks for that, and thank you Exit Lag for sponsoring our video. And now to Brewmaster. The still worst performing tank out of the bunch is gonna go all the way into B tier. Now, as we talk about these specs, I can tell you a little bit about Brewmaster because I personally played it in about 10s and I think 1 or 2 11s as an off spec for my monk. It's still struggling a little bit. The damage has been buffed, but I don't think it's going to be enough, considering that its major damage buffs have been to Blackout Kick, which kind of only hits 3 targets. So you're not going to see big improvements in Mythic Plus just with that. We need a lot more for Brewmaster, not to mention that they're not that tanky this season. Maybe they can scale better with gear because we still haven't reached, you know, that 678 item level max that we have this season. And until then, we're gonna have to see, because defensives are okay-ish, all things considered, when we put them side by side with DPS specs, because you cannot really beat the defensives of, let's say, a Vengeance Demon Hunter or a Prot Warrior. Either way, as the worst tank in the list, it's still B tier because when we rank these, and you can see this on the screen as well, we kind of look at the keys, clear, and general IO of the top players of the game, since what better sample of data to analyze than the players that are taking these specs to the max and actually putting what their potential is to work and what kind of keys they're clearing. So Brewmaster, even though it's the worst tank, is not that behind what's going to end up in S tier, so that's why it's not D tier, which is the bottom of the list. Speaking of S tier, although it might still be a little bit too early, I still believe Discipline Priest will probably be S tier by a month's time. At the very least, it will drop down to A tier. It's still currently performing the best out of all of the healers right now. Close, we're gonna get to that. Because of its kit, because of its damage, because of how efficient it is with its healing. The damage reduction that it offers to the group has been slightly nerfed, and I don't know if we're gonna see this right now, but considering that at the time of recording, we're looking at people doing plus 17 keys with discipline, with or without the buffs or nerfs, I would be surprised if the ranking changes too much. Marcelian is definitely a big Discipline Priest connoisseur. He obviously mains in this patch, and we already have Discipline Priest videos on our channel that you can watch. But outside of that, I cannot really speak much of it. It's, I believe, one of the best healers because of its cooldown kit as well. I would know because I was healed by Marcelian on my Brewmaster and on my Windwalker. Pain suppression is so good. Barrier is so good. Not to mention that its efficient damage dealing is good when it comes to just, you know, keeping your party up with Atonement. Holy Paladin has also been buffed, but I don't know if it's enough. At the time of recording right now, it's one of the worst healers in the game, and I do want to make the first caveat of today. Holy Paladin could be hard carried by one individual, the Adonis, the Greek god, the son of Zeus himself, Ellesmere, who's just built different and I think just has like 100 to 200 IO score over every other Holy Paladin in the game. And if we were gonna just look at Holy Paladin's performance when you're putting it into Ellesmere's hands, it might just well be at least an A tier class. It's doing really high keys, or at least Ellesmere is, but we all know that some individuals are just really good at their specs. But this is also a good example as to how the distribution of performance goes when it comes to specs in World of Warcraft and probably across other areas of the world. When you have the majority of the talent move towards, let's say, Discipline Priest in this sense, all of the other healers will drop down, because obviously there are some players that are just really good no matter what they play, and if the majority of the best healers in the game would play Holy Paladin, you would probably see Holy Paladin up in A tier, but you probably would see fewer S tier healers. So that's how kind of it works at the moment. It's still probably struggling a little bit, and I feel in terms of design, Holy Paladin just doesn't really match M+ unless you like really rack your brain. It's not an intuitive healer. It feels like it has all of the toolkit, but it doesn't really feel like it synergizes well with itself as Discipline Priest would. Holy Priest is also down bad in B tier. Well, I say B tier once again, but B tier is, I think, plus 14s is where these people are pushing keys, and plus 14s are not that bad considering that the highest keys that have been done are 17s, and at the time of this recording I think there's about 22 17s done in time, or at least logged. I don't know if there's like more hidden from people just like private logging or not, you know, sharing, or I don't know if, I don't even know if that's a thing anymore for Mythic Plus. But considering that you're about 3 keys level behind, it's not that bad for the worst spec in the game. And of course, there are Holy Priests that are doing higher than 14s, they're doing 15s as well, so it's not that behind. But overall, Holy Priest has definitely had a significant loss. The throughput is nice, although it does kind of like Holy Paladin feels a little bit all over the place. It feels like Holy Priest has a lot of tools and it doesn't really know what to do with most of them, because it should be just fairly explanatory. You just fill up HP bars. That was the purpose of Holy Priest for the longest time. But then we get buffs like 60% increase in renew healing. That's not really filling up HP bars, even though that passively also happens. It's mostly a heal over time. So in my eyes, I feel like Holy Priest, to a lesser degree, struggles from spec identity the same way that Holy Paladin does, and until that spec identity can be identified, we don't really know what we want for the strengths of Holy Priest to be. The second caveat of today is Guardian Druid. Now, before you see the top bears in the world, I do want to say that Guardian Druid overall as a tank, for just look at everybody playing Guardian Druid, is probably around B tier. It's, well, To be fair, I think it would be between A tier and B tier. So Brewmaster, Holy Paladin, Holy Priest would probably be in C tier if we're going to look at all of the bears. However, bear is a very good tank. And right now, there's one particular bear out there who is also the #1 tank in the world. And I had a conversation with Marcelian about this because that dude is doing keys at the same level as Vengeance Demon Hunter, which is, you know, gonna be way higher. He's doing, let's say, S tier level keys. He's doing 17s right now. But he's like the only bear that does that. Or there's maybe 1 or 2 more by the time you watch this video. So there's like one person that's about 200 score above everybody else. It is nuts. Obviously, I'm talking about Squish Vegan, and he's taking the bear to like a whole new level. So much so that if we're gonna take a look at bear as a spec and what its potential is, then that would probably be close to S tier level potential. It's not quite there, I feel. I think Squish Vegan is one of those try-hards, one-trick pony bears who are just very good at the bear, but the bear does have drawbacks compared to S tier level tanks. The damage is still not there yet as far as I understand it. It's probably one of the tankiest tanks, and I kind of said that since the PTR for 2 months already, but the damage is definitely a problem. That's probably what's keeping a lot of the other bears from climbing up into S tier. But because of Squish Vegan, I'm gonna give it a 50% benefit of that. I'm gonna meet it halfway and put it into A tier, even though I kind of wanted to put it into S tier. But all of the bears are just not there yet. But it has potential, so that's why it's getting a Marcelian Online vote into being an A tier tank. S tier for the second healer of today. I don't think we ever had 2 healers in the S tier in M+, almost ever, I don't think. This probably is a first. Of course, most of the data that we have is slightly prior to the Mistweaver nerfs. Of course, there are keys that have been done recently after the nerfs in terms of its damage, and I think that was probably the main strong point of Mistweaver going into Mythic Plus keys and high keys as well. Way more damage than Discipline Priest for sure. I still believe Mistweaver has a worse kit than Discipline when it comes to keeping people alive, and that's something that Mistweavers have been talking about over the years. Life Cocoon is not particularly amazing. I don't know if it changed. I haven't seen a patch note addressing Life Cocoon in like months and months, and that's a big problem when you want to heal big HP tanks like Vengeance and Blood Decays and maybe even Bears, because to my knowledge, Life Cocoon scales with your personal HP bar, and when a tank has, let's say, almost double, if they pop their big defensives like Metamorphosis or Vampiric Blood, almost double your HP bar, shielding them for half of their HP with a Life Cocoon that can be taken down in like 3 melees by a big boss in a high key. It's now really a good defensive. Cannot really compare it to Pain Suppression. That's what I'm trying to say, right? The throughput is there and the damage is definitely there, and that should be enough to keep it into S tier, but we'll see. Since we're at the beginning of the season, we'll see how this advances in about a month. But yay for Mistweaver, and I would honestly want to see more than 1 healer and more than 1 tank into S tier to give people more options and hopefully eliminate this discrimination when it comes to inviting people into groups, which will still apply to Preservation because it is currently the worst rated healer in the game, and also compared to tanks as well, because we're looking at both today, of course. It's just not there. It received some buffs, of course, 2 or 3 days ago, so it might be a little bit better, but I do feel like it has decent drawbacks. Evoker is not a particularly tanky class. Augmentation just kind of has most of the tankiness of the entire class, and obviously you're not going to play that. So unless some tankiness is going to be shifted into Preservation, then we're probably going to see it there. Like, there are a lot of healers that are not particularly tanky, but when you're a Preservation Evoker with a shorter range on your heal that constantly needs to move and reposition, the risk of you getting hit or addressing damage that's taken is a little bit higher than with other healers, so that might also play a factor into this. But we're also talking about the damage and throughput. The damage hasn't really been there ever since it was nerfed at the beginning of Dragonflight, and ever since then it has struggled. When it comes to high keys, as much as we don't like to admit it, healer damage kind of matters a little bit because you're, you know, in a race against time. Every little bit of progress helps, and when you play with exceptional players, tanks and DPS alike, that don't take unnecessary damage, you don't really have to heal a lot of the time, so you know, you have to do damage, because what else are you gonna do? What benefit are you for your party? But this is why whenever we make this tier list, by the way, everybody remember, we're talking about the creme de la creme, the 0.1% of the player base. You understand what 0.1% means? Means that if you know 100 people, you still don't know one of these motherfuckers that push these high keys. And I bet your bottom you don't know 100 WoW players as of today. So that's who this tier list is essentially, not necessarily for, but who it analyzes, because we want to look at where the specs can perform at their highest, right? So this is what this is. And speaking of, Prot Paladin has dipped a little bit since last season. It's not that bad actually, but we do have some tryhards Prot Paladins that are still holding up the flag and carrying it into battle and doing, I believe, 16s. Haven't touched the 17 yet. 15, 16s is probably where Prot Paladin is at the moment. It has been decently nerfed since last season, and I don't think that tier set definitely helps them that much. Not at the moment anyway. So we'll see. Usually Prot Paladin gets better and better as the season progresses, because it's one of those tanks, probably the tank that scales the best with gear. It takes a lot of defensive power and offensive power from a lot of the secondary stats that you inadvertently or inevitably end up having on yourself and on your gears. I predict it will probably be definitely in front of Blood Decay by the end of the season. I don't know about Bear, we'll have to see. Prot Warrior, the big nerfed tank this season, definitely ahead of Blood Death Knight at the moment. It obviously has been nerfed. The damage nerf is about... Oh, we just did a video, man, and I forgot. Was it about 12%? Or 25%. I'm kind of confusing the numbers when it comes to Prot Warrior. The damage was pretty insane, and it might still be addressed a little bit, although I would honestly just hope the other tanks get a boost in damage, because the difference between DPS and tank damage right now is colossal, pun intended. So Prot Warrior is kind of like the only tank that feels like it can not keep up with the DPS, but not be afraid to lose aggro. On top of that, Prot Warrior is one of the tankiest tanks. And that's kind of everything you need to know about Prot Warrior, since there's not much else that it brings to a party. And this is like a broken record at this point. We've been talking about this for years. Warrior is just not fundamentally a good addition to your group, unless it just has the numbers. We can talk about damage numbers, which obviously Prot Warrior has, and tanking numbers or survivability, or how smarter people like to say effective HP, which is your defensives and your parries and your blocks all converted into health to kind of measure the tankiness and survivability of a tank. And Prot Warrior is one of the highest tanks with this out there, one of the most reliable ones to heal if played correctly. So it's probably why it is so high. It's overall doing more keys than Bear, but Bear is doing higher keys than Prot Warrior. So they're kind of neck and neck at the moment. We'll see if this dynamic changes over the course of the next few weeks. Resto Druid is also an interesting healer right now, because when we look at data for the tier list, we look at WarcraftLogs, we look at Archon.gg, we look at Radar.io, which Archon.gg and WarcraftLogs are kind of the same thing, and they don't really rank Resto Druid that highly. But when you look at the kind of keys that Resto Druids clear, at least the top Resto Druids, they're pretty high keys. Once again, there's a discussion of, are we looking at your average Joe doing +2s and failing with a Resto Druid, or we're looking at the people that know how to play the spec the best and put it to good use? So we opted for the latter, and those people are actually pushing really good keys with Resto Druid, surprisingly, because I thought Resto Druid was really struggling, and it's mostly to do with the damage as well. Marcelian has been telling me, since he is more in the know with the healers this season, so it would make sense, even though its mastery is kind of like a ping pong ball or like a yo-yo going back and forth, back and forth. Is the mastery good or is it bad this season? I don't know. We're coin flipping. This season is a bad season for mastery. We're just going to get more damage. We're going to do damage. We're going to heal people and kill stuff. Resto Shaman, also not bad. I believe it's A tier as well. Pretty high up there. I feel like in terms of overall dungeon score, it's slightly behind Prot Warrior, but it's still, you know, obviously ahead of the other healers in the game, and that's great. I mean, it had a road to go from the beginning of the expansion, where it was #1 healer in the first part of Season 1, then it dropped to like 2 or 3 spots in the latter part. Now it's kind of like in between. It's a reliable healer. You don't really need that many poison and curse dispels, although there's one curse that is brutal. I'm talking about the Theater of Pain one that, oh my god, whenever you have a dispel for that, it's like night and day. That curse is in our 12s that we're doing is almost a guaranteed kill on the player with our eye level. I can only imagine what that does in like 15s and 16s. So that curse spell is going to be good. And not to mention Spirit Link. Dude, have you ever felt safer as a player when inside a Spirit Link? I don't think so. I think Spirit Link is the safest place to be in this whole wide world. It is my sanctuary and where I retreat whenever they nerf my main again. And last but not least, Vengeance Demon Hunter, the poster boy for tanks this season, all the way into S tier. You're gonna see a graph at the end with all of the keys done by all of the tanks and healers this season, depending on their key level, and you'll see exactly how all of them rank. And before we go there, I do want to mention that this is a very early look at the tier list, and we try to put as many disclaimers and caveats in so you can understand that this type of ranking has a lot of complexities to it. Like the #1 tank in the world right now, if you look at the top 10 tanks, is Squish Vegan on the bear, and then you have all of the rest of the Vengeance. And so does that mean that bear is an S tier spec? The #1 Holy Paladin is a bunch of spots above the majority of the healers in the game right now. Does that mean Holy Paladin deserves a higher ranking? It has a lot of nuance. Whenever we look at this data and the way we decide which spec goes where, we try to be very balanced and very mathematical about it. So hopefully you agree. If not, you can always let us know in the comment section down below. And you can look at how these tanks and healers are played throughout Mythic Plus by the majority of the players based on the key levels that they do right now and based on the number of keys that they do as well. And you can see that most of the players start to actually play Mythic Plus at around +6, 7s, and then +10s. I think 10s have the most amount of keys done over the course of the entire season, and pretty much every time, since that's usually where the rewards stop. But then if you go all the way up to +17s, where the players are pushing right now, you can see there's like 10 keys done by a Guardian Druid, and I'm pretty sure like all of those keys are done by Squish Vegan. There might be one bear that slipped in there that I couldn't catch. So it's never 100% correct, but what you need to know is what were these buffs and nerfs that affected the specs or didn't affect them enough. And luckily for you, we have a video right here that you can check where we went through all of the specs, buffs, and nerfs that just hit this week, so you know exactly what you can expect from your performance.